Nehmen Sie bitte Platz.
Please be seated.
Sehr geehrte Frau Bundestagspräsidentin,
Madam President of the Bundestag, Chancellor,
Ratspräsident,
President of the Bundesrat, Excellencies,
heute insbesondere
today, above all,
Makeiev,
Ambassador Makeiev,
verehrte Abgeordnete,
members of the Bundestag, honored guests.
Yahidne.
Yahidne.
Meine Damen und Herren, Yahidne ist ein Straßendorf
Yahidne is a one-street village somewhere between Chernihiv and Kiev.
Ein Dorf wie
A
viele
village like many others
dort in der
in
Nordukraine,
northern
klein,
Ukraine,
unauf,
small, inconspicuous,
ohne jede
without any military significance.
Ich werde diesen
But I will never forget it.
Oktober war ich dort.
I was there in October,
Und was mir die Menschen über ihr
and
Martyrium
what
erzählt
people there told me about the terrible ordeal
in mein Gedächtnis.
they suffered will remain etched in my memory forever.
Wenige Tage nach dem Überfall
Soon after the war began,
hatten Soldaten
after the invasion began, a Russian army unit occupied the village.
die Einwohner
They
gefangen
rounded up the inhabitants and locked them up
der kleinen Dorfschule.
in
Mehr
the
als
basement of the small village school. More than
darunter Kranke,
200 people in a narrow space, elderly people, young people,
das jüngste gerade mal
babies,
1,5 Monate alt.
the youngest, a six-week-old baby. They crouched on the ground in darkness and cold with almost nothing to eat, with no toilets, 28 long days and nights.
Die ersten der Alten
The
starben.
first of the elderly villagers died.
13 von ihnen
In all,
in den Keller.
13 of them did not survive the basement, but it was not allowed to carry the bodies outside, so the children
Zwischen den Leichen.
in the basement had to play between the bodies of the deceased.
Als mir die Männer des Dorfes diese Geschichte erzählt haben,
When the men of the village told me this story, they were in tears as they remembered the suffering
die Frauen
and the
konnten gar nicht.
humiliation, and the women were even unable to talk about what had happened to them outside the basement.
Nur ein Beispiel,
This is just one example, I know.
aber es war und ist
But it was and still is the day-to-day reality in many parts of Ukraine.
unschuldige Menschen.
Every day, innocent people are dying. Mothers are widowed and children are orphaned. Every day, Russia inflicts immeasurable suffering
in die Ukraine.
on Ukraine.
Und auch ein Jahr nach
And even 1 year after Russia's attack against Ukraine,
geht dieser Krieg weiter.
this war continues with unrelenting intensity. There are no words to describe the pain and cruelty which millions of Ukrainians are experiencing
Ihre Liebsten,
when they mourn their loved ones,
wenn sie bei jedem Luftalarm ihr eigenes
when they fear for their own lives every time they hear an air raid siren,
Eis und Schnee
and when
in
they
Schützengräben.
endure in ice and snow in the trenches.
Heute am Jahrestag
Today, on the anniversary of the Russian invasion,
gemeinsam in
here at this joint event with Ukraine,
sind Menschen
there are
und
people among us who have experienced the unimaginable.
die Hölle, die ich
The
durchgemacht
hell I went through,
sie kann von niemandem,
it cannot be dreamed by anyone,
liebe Frau,
is what you said, Ms. Polishchuk, after you survived the desperate fight for Mariupol and the siege in the catacombs of Azovstal.
wir alle erinnern
We
uns,
all remember the short video from the catacombs which shows you sitting there with so many women and men without food and medicine, and by the end also without ammunition.
und dann ist da ihre Stimme.
And then we hear your voice,
Und sie singen,
and you're singing. You sing of the fight for Ukraine's freedom, your country's freedom. Many millions of Ukrainians have stood up to their Russian attackers every single day. Their courage and their belief that their right to independence and a self-determined life in freedom must be defended is there, and it is a powerful force. These men and women fear for their lives every day. They fear for their loved ones, but they also fight for their country and their freedom every day. We Germans admire the courage, the strength and the will of the people of Ukraine, and we stand in solidarity with them. We are helping them to defend themselves. We share in the suffering of millions, and we mourn their dead. Honored guests, I would like to ask you to pause with me for a moment to remember the victims of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Please stand. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, war is back in Europe for the first time since the Second World War. In the midst of Europe, a campaign of conquest is unfolding. Russia denies Ukraine its right to exist. It wants to destroy Ukraine as an independent nation. The inviolability of borders, the sovereignty and self-determination of a country, human dignity and peace, respect for rules and the law, all this means nothing to Putin. Everything on which our coexistence in Europe is built does not count for anything with him. But it counts for something with us. Germany is not at war, but this war most certainly concerns us. Russia's attack has plunged us back into a time we thought we had left behind us. Russia's war of aggression has reduced the European security order to ashes. It is an attack on all the lessons that the world has learned from the two world wars. It is an attack on everything we too stand for. And that is what makes it the epochal shift we are currently experiencing. This new era, ladies and gentlemen, raises new questions. And in our search for answers, we can't find much in the past. We cannot find anything to draw on from the routines from the last decades. For the European Union, these have been decades of stability and growth, and this is what shaped our thinking and our actions. Today, we have to think differently, and we have to act differently. It goes without saying that we are providing financial and economic assistance for this country under attack, that more than 1 million Ukrainians have found refuge here with us. And I am grateful to all Germans, to everyone in our country, for having supported the victims of this war in such large numbers. They are supporting refugees from Ukraine. They help their twin cities, sister cities in Ukraine, and they will continue to do so. Think differently and acting differently in this new era also means that we now make decisions we would have maybe considered inconceivable a year or two ago. We are supplying weapons to a theater of war, heavy weapons, and we are providing Ukraine with unprecedented military support, with great effort and in all earnestness. And of course, each decision goes hand in hand with big, sometimes emotional debates. Some are concerned about escalation. Others would like to speed up decisions. But I know one thing for sure, ladies and gentlemen, the political decision makers sitting here in front of me, both in the government and in the opposition, are well aware of the great implications that each and every decision has. They make assessment and take decisions as part of their responsibility for our country, for our alliance, and for Ukraine. And I believe they deserve our trust and respect for that. Germany is now also in military terms the biggest supporter of Ukraine on the European continent, and despite all the controversial and sometimes heated debates, I am certain that we will continue to do that. So, Ambassador, I can tell you that also when we look at what is ahead of us, you can rely on Germany. Niemeččina, naději, sojušník. We have seen it last year. Our democracy is strong, much stronger than Putin imagined, and also stronger than we ourselves have perhaps sometimes believed. Putin is counting on Ukraine's allies becoming tired of the war at some point, that we will become jaded and look away from the horrors which of course, are horrors that are extremely difficult for us to bear as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we will not do him that favor. We will not do Putin that favor. Yes, our resolve and our unity will be needed for a long time to come. We are supporting Ukraine on its path towards the European Union, a path which is closely linked to the reconstruction of this war-torn country. And we know that in the long term, even after this war, Ukraine will need a strong defense and effective security guarantees. It will rely on these. And also for that, we are standing by your side, Ambassador Makeiev. Ukraine is fighting for its country, its freedom, its future in Europe. It is fighting against land grab and occupation. It is fighting for what every country in this world claims for itself, for what is actually required for just and lasting peace. Many people are longing for peace these times, in our country, around the world, but nowhere more than in Ukraine itself. Yet a sham peace, which simply rewards Putin's land grab, and leaves people at the mercy of the arbitrary actions of their occupiers, is not a real peace. An overwhelming majority of the states in the United Nations reaffirmed yesterday that if peace is to be established, it must be a just and lasting peace. We very much welcome any constructive proposal bringing us closer to fair and just peace. Whether the global power of China would like to play such a constructive role remains to be seen. If that is the case, then China should talk not only with Moscow, but also with Kiev. If that is the case, China should join the overwhelming majority of states under the roof of the United Nations and stand up for peace. And if that is the case, that means that together we need to hold high the principles of the United Nations where they are breached on a daily basis. It is Russia that has brutally attacked its neighboring country. It is Russia that keeps sending new troops to the front. It is not the defense support from the West that is prolonging the war. It is Russia. It is not Ukraine nor its allies that are an obstacle to peace. It is Russia. Putin knows very well what needs to be done if he genuinely wanted the war to end. Only when Russian troops withdraw, a path towards negotiation can be open, and that is what the United Nations resolution of yesterday calls for. Ladies and gentlemen, it must be made clear to Russia that there cannot be a victory in its criminal war. Putin wants victory. He wants victory by all means, but the truth is, anyone who orders murder and killings, who orders Ukraine to be destroyed by bombs, cities to be devastated, and children to be abducted, who allows their own soldiers to senselessly bleed to death day after day, will never go down in history as a victor. They have already lost. Ladies and gentlemen, you will all have seen the photos in the gallery when you entered this room. The ruins of a flat in Kharkiv, the ruins of a house in the Donbass, which once was home to the people who lived there, a little boy at his mother's grave in Bucha. And you might also have seen the last, a central photo in this exhibition. It portrays a soldier in a village near Kherson with his arms around a woman. The two of them are simply glad to see that the other one is alive. They feel exhausted but liberated. Here we can catch a brief glimpse of peace. And I hope that we will soon see many pictures like this one. Thank you very much.
Дорогий народи Німеччини, пане федеральний президент.
German people, Mr. President, Chancellor, dear Olaf, today marks the first anniversary since everything changed for Ukraine, for Germany, for Europe, and the whole free world. What the free world got used to in decades turned into something that needs to be fought for. Diplomacy did not work. The existing security architecture of the world failed. The old European hope that economic relations could stop Russian tanks did not work. But something did work indeed. Unity, the unity of Ukraine, Germany, and the free world as a whole, and the resolve to defend the foundations of our coexistence. On Ukrainian soil, we are fighting for something without which you, dear friends, could not fathom and envisage your own life. It's security, basic security, freedom, and laws, human dignity, and the right of each and every human being and each community to be respected, the blessing to live in a family, and the opportunity to dream of a safe and secure future for their own children. It's the simple things. 1,877 Ukrainian cities and villages are denied of this opportunity. The Russian invaders want to add more of the destinies of millions. In our city that was invaded and occupied by Russians in Mariupol, there are no intact buildings anymore. Russia did everything to kill everyone there. We almost had 1.5 million people living in Mariupol. Mariupol is destroyed up to 90%. The ruins of buildings that were burned down and destroyed by Russians are being destroyed and done away with. The rubble is done away with, and these ruins are turned into rubble that is to be used for the construction of new roads. We need to do everything in our power to not allow Russia to occupy Ukraine and our neighbors and turn our cities into rubble. Do we have the resolve and the power? Yes, we are indeed to do so. We're in unity. We stand together. We are capable to end the Russian aggression this year. From the very beginning, the first minutes of the Russian invasion, Germany stood by our side. Germany helps us to protect Ukraine from Russian terror. And Germany will be on our side on the day of victory and on the day of freedom. Germany will stand by our side when we rescue our cities from Russian terror. Mr. President, Mr. Chancellor, German people, today, now is the time to restore peace with our courage and with our weapons, and to create security for all. No one will attack us anymore. No one will attack freedom if he knows that the free world is resolved enough to defend this freedom. No one will repeat the 24th of February of last year if he knows that on the whole of territory of Ukraine, there is no more aggressor, no more occupier. We can make sure that this happens together with you, together with everyone around the world who value life. I thank you for your support. I thank you for standing by our side this past year. Thank you, Mr. Federal President. Thank you, Olaf, for your confidence and trust in Ukraine, in our citizens, and in our shared values of a free, united, and peaceful Europe. Glory to those who fight for freedom. Slava Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe this 24th of February, 1 year ago, is one of the moments where everyone knows where he or she was, and learned about when he learned about what is going to define us for the coming years. I remember I had breakfast with the family. My son turned 15, and I thought, well, he's probably going to have to serve again, and there was a rift, if you will, and we are far away from the epicenter of this catastrophe, which we want to talk about. We want to discuss the situation for those who are suffering it on a daily basis, with Ukrainians, men and women, and we want to talk about the contribution cooperation Germany can and must lend in order to have a future with certainties again. Allow me to introduce our panelists, and I'd like to introduce them to you. Victoria Palichuk, she is an elementary school teacher, and she came to Germany from Ukraine a year ago. Warm welcome to you.
Katerina Polishuk.
Katerina Ptashka, she asked me to call her. She's a singer. She was a paramedic. She became known as Bird of Azovstal, Ptashka, and she was the one who encouraged the fighters in Azovstal in the very difficult days. A warm welcome to you.
Katerina Mischenko ist bei uns, Autorin ist.
Katerina Mischenko is with us. She's an author, an essayist, and an editor. A warm welcome to you.
Vadim Skibitsky,
the general of the Ukrainian army. A warm welcome to you.
Jochen
Flassbart, State Secretary in the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and he's a representative of the government at the International Donor Coordination Platform for Ukraine. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Flassbart. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Martin Horn, Lord Mayor of the city Freiburg. A warm welcome to you. Mrs. Mischenko, I'd like to begin with you. This day, 1 year ago, how did you experience the morning of the 24th of February? How did you learn what is happening, and when the days ahead and the evenings ahead were quite worrisome indeed? I very well remember those days. I was sleeping and I heard the air raid alarm. I woke up and my first thought was, well, finally the alarm is being tested now. It was planned, but it is happening now. But then I watched the news, and I saw in big letters that Putin had begun and started the war. And these words are etched into my memory together with the alarm. This is the image that I retain of February 24th. Were you prepared that this could happen? Well, I thought I was prepared. I calmed down and I thought, yes, we're going to get through this, we are going to handle this, and we're going to remain in the city. Nothing must happen to us. I somehow calmed down too much. At the same time, I believe you cannot really prepare for something like that. It's a truly new experience. It is a new discovery to be witnessing history in the making, not just perceiving it as history, as something of the past, but you're witnessing it as a process that can engulf and devour a human being. It was a very difficult experience, but now 1 year has passed, and this is the lesson that we draw and we learned. You experienced this in the government quarters of the city. How quickly did you realize that you cannot stay? Well, when talking to my neighbors, I called my neighbor and I said, Alexander, what about our basement? Is our basement still closed? And I think it is now to prepare our basement. And he said, oh, Katja, calm down. Should the Russian come, they want to go to Zelensky right away. They are not interested in us. Nothing will happen to us. What they want is taking over power. And the government is the Russians' target. And I didn't understand why this should calm me down, because we live close to the government quarter of the city, but this this feeling that my capital, my city, could be occupied so quickly didn't calm me down at all. Well, you left, and we're going to discuss your experiences in Germany. Thank you. Mrs. Pradishuk, you woke up this morning. You heard armored vehicles in the morning. What did you think would happen? What did you believe?
Живемо в приватному секторі неподалік траси, яка сполучає, веде до Києва.
Well, we lived in a building close to this street leading to Kiev, and we were very close, and we heard these armored vehicles, these track vehicles, and it is a gruesome sound. I hope no one else will have to hear this sound. And someone told me on the phone, I hear missiles, I hear tanks. I thought it was a dream, but I opened my eyes and I saw that my husband was talking to someone on the phone in central Ukraine. And then I woke up, and as Mrs. Mishinka said, I watched the news, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because no sane brain, no healthy brain is capable of accepting that. And towards the evening, when we realized that the situation would not calm down, and that when it became clear that we needed to do something and that we had to leave, but we didn't succeed, so we came back. So yes, you tried to flee and you failed. Yes, we drove to the first border crossing, but we spent 8 hours in the queue, and we only managed to move ahead for 20 meters. Many people were there. There was panic. Many were traveling on foot. No one knew what was happening. People cried. There was chaos. So this is why we decided to better return home and wait what was happening with a sober mind. So how often did you try to cross the border into Poland? Twice. What feelings did you have at this border crossing? Did you believe we're leaving this country and we will return in a couple of weeks' times? Or did you think that you're leaving the life you led until then behind? What were you thinking when you left? A couple of days ago, I thought, I thought I would be leaving the country for 1 or 2 weeks or a month. The war will not go on for that long. But now I realize that I was hoping, I was believing, I thought it was surreal. It could not be in the 21st century that people would invade another country to kill people, to torture children. But the situation has evolved differently than I hoped for. Yes, you're still in Germany. We want to talk about this. I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Polishuk. She's going to sing. The president said that you actually were in Azovstal. You are 21 years old, a trained opera singer. How did you actually get into this situation, and what did you do there? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How can I describe this? I'm often asked this, and people ask me in Russian, captivity, why were you in war? How did you go there? And I answered, I my country is at war. I'm from Western Ukraine, more than 1,000 kilometers from the front lines. But in my country, in the 21st century, we are at war, and I don't want Russian soldiers to invade my parental home and come see my parents. I experience what they do with peaceful people. I volunteered to go to the front lines, and I provided medical support. I looked after the injured. And that started in 2014, and I was close to Mariupol when the war started, and this led me to stay in Mariupol. I was in an information vacuum, if you will. I had to take a decision and decide whether to stay or not. Either you stay and defend your country until Europe listens to us and hears us and supports us, and until we're able to train our soldiers. I knew that this war would come. I was waiting, expecting this, because I know who is the enemy, who is our enemy. You trained as an opera singer because you wanted to do something beautiful, but you knew that the war would come starting 2014, as early as 2014. I was 13 years old in 2014, and I decided for myself, when I am an adult, I will go to war. But I assumed that the war would be over by the time I'm an adult, because from history, you know that wars don't take longer than 4 or 5 years. And my friends told me, "What are you talking about? It's the 21st century. We are a European nation. People go to space. There will not be war." But I told my friends, look into history. Look at what the Russians did 100 years ago with peaceful people. For history, 100 years are just the bat of an eyelid. I wanted to train to become an opera singer. I wanted to fill my youth with something beautiful. I didn't think that this could help at the front lines or even become useful. I thought music and war don't go together well, but we saw that music can have a healing effect in war. I will turn around here. We're going to talk about the men who fought in Azovstal. You didn't leave the country together with your husband. He's back in Kiev. Are you worried about your husband and what will happen to him in the coming weeks and months? Yes, I'm very worried. Because we're mobilized, it's permanent, and the war goes on and on. You speak to him on a daily basis, right? But I'm very much worried about the people. For me, it is difficult to just think about my own family or the families of other citizens and separate their fate from the fate of my family. But when reading the news, and I heard that friends or acquaintances volunteered and that others joined the army in the first weeks and is in captivity now for 7 months without any news of him. Every time I read those news, I had the feeling they will all disappear. People are drawn into this war, and many don't return. And this is what I described, the war that is devouring, engulfing us. It's a terrible feeling. At the same time, this feeling is always present, and it's like a background noise with which you have to live, but you can't get accustomed to it. No, you don't have to get accustomed to this. I believe it is very important, especially when you're in safe places. I live here in Germany now, and I have this opportunity to be here and to have a large part of my family in security, in safety. Your son, and the responsibility is even bigger. It's a responsibility to not despair and continue working. Mr. Skibitsky, when did you expect this attack to happen? Which scenarios did the Ukrainian army have as far as the 24th of February is concerned? Good morning, everyone. The most important thing was the following. The secret intelligence services of Ukraine knew every step, and they knew that this aggression and this attack would happen. Since spring of 2021, when maneuvers took place, when we've seen arms being transported to Crimea, and when soldiers were sent to the borders, a large amount of tanks, 340 fighter planes, and 840 vehicles, and so we've seen weapons sent to the Ukrainian borders from 4 different military districts. So as early as January, it was clear that Russia is planning something. And General Bogdanov, the head of the armed forces, predicted that the war would start on February 15. The war didn't start then, but we knew the direction the Russian troops were headed to, and we didn't. We just got confused about the dates and the timeline Russia had. Since 2014, we've been at war for a very long time, and we knew that Putin will not relent in his efforts. He wanted the whole of Ukraine, the territory of Ukraine, the economic potential, the human capital, everything that our country can give him. And on February 24th, he started the second step towards the full occupation of our country. We have the plans, and we've seen the maps. And we've seen that one tactical group would have to approach us from the direction of Belarus and cut off Kiev. And we knew that paratroopers were to occupy all important crossroads and buildings in Kiev. We have these documents. I understand your question very well. What do I remember? On February 24th, we understood what was happening. 2 days ahead, we talked to the heads of the military intelligence services, and we knew that the Russian troops would attack and would be at the borders. They were in the starting positions, ready to attack. And on February 24th, at 5 or 6 o'clock, I remember that our troops were stationed in Hostomel, that members of parliament came with their cars, people with battleground experience, and they brought weapons, a Stinger. They helped defend Hostomel, and when the enemy arrived in Hostomel, it was difficult to fight for the enemy. The biggest mistake that the Kremlin admitted was that the Kremlin underestimated the resilience of the Ukrainian forces and the resilience of the Ukrainian people. They thought they could occupy Kharkiv within the framework of a day and other cities as well, but this did not happen. And let me get back to the military intelligence service. We are grateful to all of the Ukrainian people. We have received a tremendous amount of information the first days. We were not able to process this information. So you received information about the positions of the Russian soldiers. Yes, exactly. Everyone made an effort to give us information via mobile phone on the position of the enemy, what direction they're headed, how many tanks passed. It was a true resistance effort of the people, and our friends from the international intelligence services did not understand how this could happen. It's easy because we all defend our country. Everyone defends his or her building, our home nation, together.
There were quite a few people in the Western countries who would have thought that this will only take a few days. Were you sure from the outset that it wouldn't just take a few days? Well, of course. Because, firstly, Russia started the attack from 4 directions, but the Russian forces are able to start an attack from maximum 2 directions, and since 2014, times have changed. On the 24th of February, already 350,000 of our own soldiers had been fighting in the Donbas area in eastern Ukraine. They have combat experience, and we can still see the effects today. You might know that our artillerymen and our tank drivers, our people active in the air defense, they only need 2 to 3 weeks to learn new technologies, and that is what the result of this resistance is. Mr. Flassbart, you were born in 1962. You are the generation peace dividend, as we might call it. So you might not have reckoned with a war in your lifetime, or did you? No, I wouldn't have thought this was going to happen. And as you said, I was born in 1962, so I am part of a very privileged generation. Grew up in the west of Germany, and we were always headed in one direction in terms of world policy. That was more peace. Not everywhere on the planet, but that was the general direction. And as many others who are part of my generation, I was at the Bonner Hofgartenwiese and at other places demonstrating for peace, making peace without weapons. You are a member of the SPD party, the Social Democratic Party. So are you an opponent of your own chancellor? Well, I wasn't a member of the party back then, but there were many people, many social democrats who joined us in the protests back then. And history seemed to illustrate this, at least in the sense that we were moving towards more peace. And that was the huge shake-up, the wake-up call we've seen. Of course, this is not cannot be compared to your experience, but something really was turned upside down, something we could have never imagined. Yes, and when we spoke to people from the political sphere here in Berlin, the idea that it will only take until the next weekend and Ukraine will be overrun, this was a widespread notion. What was your position? Well, I didn't have any personal expertise myself. There were both sides. There were people who said this will only take a few days, but there were also others, especially inside the intelligence services, who had a different assessment of the situation. But only the time that followed really showed, and that was impressive for all of us to see how huge the resilience was within the Ukrainian population. And we might speak about the issue of reconstruction later on, but I think this is something that Putin has hugely underestimated, and he has also underestimated the unity of the alliance. Well, not only Putin underestimated it, but many people in the West did so too. Yes, some people in the West might have underestimated it as well, but I think Putin's miscalculation is the much more significant one. Yes, the speech of the Chancellor speaking of a watershed moment only came a few days after. What does that mean for the economic cooperation Germany undertakes? What has changed when we look at the economic cooperation Germany carries out? Development cooperation. Yes, this goes hand in hand with what I said about my generation, the things we had to learn. We also need military capabilities, but they alone will also not be sufficient. And we had two tasks. Firstly, step up the cooperation that we had with Ukraine, had established for years, and also from my time in the Federal Ministry for the Environment, which has now joined the Federal Ministry of Economics, energy efficiency and decentralization of administrative structures to move forward and develop the country, make it more resilient against corruption, promote anti-corruption structures. This was part of our cooperation with Ukraine, and there was a second part of our activities, the Global South. The Global South was very skeptical, saying, now there is a huge wildfire in Europe, now you are forgetting about us, and the terrible impacts, not only food insecurity, food scarcity, but also the reactions of the market, seeing skyrocketing prices for bread, energy, food, and that really required us to make it very clear that we're not forgetting about the Global South. And I spoke about that with the ambassador in December, that it is important and that Ukraine shares this position that we do not forget about global solidarity in the process. Yes, there was a vote in the United Nations General Assembly yesterday, and it really showed that there are those in the Global South who have an entirely different position regarding that conflict and probably might say different things. So how do you interpret this vote? There is a clear majority speaking up for the end of this war and against the Russian aggression, but there is also a big group of abstentions. Well, it's not a big group, it's a relevant group, but I think the vote was quite clear, and every country has a different history for its voting decision. When I traveled to Laos with the and talked to the foreign minister there, he told me we will not forget who stood by our side in our own history. We were trained, all our elites were trained in Moscow. We have friends there. And in Africa, it's a different story. When people also mirror what we had done, where have you been, is what people ask. Which conflicts do you know about in Germany? And I think the worst recipe would be to be arrogant. We need to listen, and we must not fall back into a reflex saying that only if you follow us here, we will continue to work together with you. This would be a dead end. Lord Mayor of Freiburg in Breisgau, a partner city of Lviv, did you know from the first day of the war that the events that happened there would affect your city too? I think that was quite clear from the beginning, from day one. On the Monday of the first week, I had a video conference with my colleague in Lviv, and there was an imminent threat, and immediately on the 24th of February, our sister city asked for an emergency video call with all partner cities. Vilnius, Tiflis, Freiburg, many Polish cities also joined this call, and we knew that immediately that we would act, that we would help in a way that concretely helps in concrete terms. So we asked our Ukrainian friends to send over a list of what they needed, medical equipment. The western part of Ukraine is not so much affected by war attacks, but it's very significant for taking care of the wounded. So it was clear from the beginning that Freiburg would be involved. And over more than 30 years, we've had a city partnership with Lviv, and it has quite a remarkable origins. The mayor back then, during the Cold War, wanted to bring together a western and eastern sister city. Lviv became a Ukrainian city, and Madison in the US was part of this too. We have very close ties with Lviv, and in the past 365 days, these were very intensive relations. You were on the ground in June, and I suppose it's a different experience of war when you speak about it from Germany or when you're on the ground there. Well, it was important for me to travel there, but it was also important for me to show solidarity with that trip, and this paradoxical idea. Lviv is such a vibrant city, a startup city. People sitting in cafes, a normal life during the day was visible. And on the other hand, every day at 12 o'clock you had funerals in the heart of the city. People of eastern cities had died and were buried. I was present at several burials. A 30-year-old engineer with 3 children died. The wife, the children were all devastated. It is such an emotional situation, and this ambivalence between going on, continuing, and Ukrainians also say we should avoid a brain drain. People should not only move west, we need people to stay in the country. The visits to the hospitals, we have a big cooperation project with hospitals. We provide equipment, and it's horrible to see an 11-year-old boy walking out of a train station. A bomb attack happens, he loses his parents, his siblings, he loses his legs, and then people help. So many people from Freiburg helped. We have never seen such support for a sister city. We received money from Stuttgart, from Berlin. We're so grateful for that. And when you stand in Lviv and you see the emergency electricity generator that we have ordered in February, because in February people had already asked that for such generators, and then in autumn the infrastructure was hit. In these dark times, having such a small glimmer of hope is so important. Ptaszka. Oh, this technical equipment, sorry. I would like to talk to you about the 82 days you spent in the Azovstal works in Mariupol. From the beginning, there were no supplies, no water, no medicines. Yes, exactly. So you knew when you started to be encircled that this was a situation that could cost you your life. Yes.
Це логічно, це зрозуміло. В мою країну прийшла війна, і коли ти бачиш...
It's only logical, it's natural. War came upon my country, and when you see that in front of your eyes, a 12-year-old girl is standing in the street, and she has just seen her mother being torn to pieces. You don't want that the children of people you went to school with, the children of your brothers and sisters have to see something like this, and then you have to take a decision. And as wise people have said, which world are you choosing? Which path are you choosing? Thousands of doctors, engineers, IT specialists, opera singers, actors, ballet dancers took up arms and started defending their home, their world, so that Ukraine became a shield. We know that Russia's appetite will not diminish. They want an empire. They want to become an empire, and they want everything. They want to destroy everything that's more beautiful, and they want to devour everything that brings light. And in so many ways, it is such a difficult situation, but we show that darkness will not win. There are bright, shining people, and they will make sure that darkness does not prevail. 82 days, how do you live with that? How can you imagine everyday life over such a long period of time?
Я вам скажу, що мені було простіше.
Well, let me say that it was easier for me in Azovstal than in Russian captivity, even though
Я вам скажу навіть з якого числа.
we'd been in the Azovstal works since March. On the 16th of March,
І у мене на руках 2 години
the field hospital was destroyed, and my best friend died in my arms. He had been in my arms for 2 hours. A few days later, my fiancé fell in the war, and I could feel that this might be the end. But I then reflected for myself, okay, I might die, I will die. What does it change if I feel sorry for myself now and ask for coming home? We had dozens of kilometers of front line with the enemy. There would have been an option to get out, but for me it wasn't horrible. The idea of dying wasn't horrible. It was horrible to betray my comrades and leave. And as long as Ukraine prevails, the world will prevail. And I just thought this is very important, that I was important in that moment. And this is what I thought. I thought that our boys up there would be proud of me, so I cannot simply surrender and tell people I couldn't go on. So I could prevail.
Sie haben auf Instagram
You spoke about the death of your fiancé on Instagram, and you said we're not losing our sense of humor. These are two things that are hard to imagine for people sitting in Germany in safety. What do you mean by saying that?
Взагалі, розумієте, люди, які зустрічаються кожного дня.
Well, you have to understand that people who are confronted with death on a daily basis, we say death appreciates the living, but I can tell you that death also appreciates a sense of humor. It's difficult to imagine this. And from the outside, it might resemble a Tarantino movie, but I have gone through this, and you can't really believe it. But something flies in, and then these stones are falling on you, and you work with the injured, and you understand that you just have to prevail. You just have to continue. You can't tell yourself everything will be fine. You know that it's over, actually, but it is my moral fight. So you start making jokes about the injured somehow, because if you felt sorry for them, they would feel sorry for themselves. There is one person with a paralyzed hand, and yesterday I said, boys, let's get to work. I have one hand, I don't have eight, so help me take up work with your left hand. And this sense of humor helped us. So we are trying to use this sense of humor. At Easter we say Christ has resurrected, and my fiance's nickname was Christ. So Jesus Christ resurrected. So that was our little joke, and it's not understandable to many outsiders. How can you go to war? How can you make sense of people dying? You would have had the opportunity to leave, and the Russians asked me, if you had the choice once again, would you take the same decision? I'm not thinking about it. Of course, I went back and I will do that again and again because I understand what significance Mariupol has and had for the world and for Ukraine. And we did this. We did it for the entire civilized world. This world wants peace. This world wants to live. They don't want to fall back to the Middle Ages. Every European does not want to see their children in a body bag, and we saw that day by day. So I will go back again and again. A week ago, I wore a military suit. Today, I'm wearing a dress, and in a few days' time, I'm so grateful for your hospitality. It's wonderful here. The architecture is beautiful, but my heart is at home, and I want to go home. I suppose people are waiting for me in Bakhmut. I'm also joking about people waiting for me in Bakhmut. Mrs. Skibitsky, the will to fight is unbroken, but your president also spoke about Mariupol and the destruction and the fact that from the rubble and from the ruins, material is taken out to build streets and rails. What can you tell us about the current situation of the war? What is the situation like right now? And what is your best and what is your worst projection or scenario? All in all, the situation continues to be very difficult. The Russian Federation has not abandoned their plans, the plans they had from the beginning. And one of these strategic goals was the full conquest of the administrative areas of Luhansk and Donetsk. And the smallest tactical success around Bakhmut, however, did not make them reach this goal. Putin started the war, called it a military special operation. It was about the conquest of Donbass. 1 year has passed. He has not reached this goal. And this is why he still cannot call this war a war openly. He talks about so many things, but he does not speak about a war of conquest that the Russian Federation is waging against our country. Concerning the plans, yes, they do have plans, but these plans, we are fighting these plans. They are changing them again and again. But our soldiers deny them this opportunity. In spring and summer, there will be a very difficult period of time. We understand that in winter, the situation was a bit softer, if you will. The winter in our area usually is a very difficult period, both for attacking and defending. I think the projection is easy. The spring and summer campaign will be directed at reaching a result, and we are prepared. We are grateful to our partners and friends who are helping us in so many ways, and they are also helping us to step up our capabilities. Our capabilities in terms of our military forces in order to fight. And the changes underway
в тих рамках і в тих кордонах, яка вона є, і це є вже ознаки. Певний час
Are significant. The Russian Federation will not exist in the borders it used to be. The Russian population needs to understand that this is a war of conquest, and the Russian army will only confirm, and we've seen that in our history. In Afghanistan, we've seen it in Soviet times. For 12 years, conflict was ongoing in Afghanistan, and many people had not understood why people were dying there, why they were coming home in caskets. And a big number of those who died in Afghanistan were Ukrainians, again Ukrainians. We are prepared to any development of the situation. We have capabilities, we have possibilities, and as Ptashka has said, the light will always prevail, and this darkness emanating from the Russian Federation will be overcome, and victory will be ours.
Das Wort. Sie haben sich einen Gedanken gemacht über, ob eigentlich.
Yes. When we read in newspapers that Ukraine demands, we thought about whether it is right. What's your view on this? Yes, I believe it's the right term. We have to demand, and what Katarina just said, or Ptashka just said, this self-perception, I am important, and without my participation, things are not possible in this resistance. It's a fundamental ethical position, and we should demand this. I believe when we treat each other as equal partners, and when we treat each other and perceive each other as subjects, then you can demand an ethical position. It's a sign of respect. Someone has to demand, someone has to sound the alarm and signal the world is not in order, and we have to do something. And the question is what to do. You will know that in Germany we have a debate about the right path ahead, and of course there's a longing for peace, for that this war will end. There will be a protest in Berlin. How do you regard and view this debate? I see this debate as a debate. I believe it is normal. And if there are people who still don't understand what's at stake and don't know about the strategic political path ahead, then I think you need to explain this to these people. Of course, one must not forget who is the aggressor here, and if we talk about an honest pacifist position, then we need to see the demilitarization of Russia. That would be a consequent pacifist position, to demand Russia to stop producing arms and to lay down arms, especially, and not use arms on Ukrainian territory. I think from a political, human, ethical point of view, it is not right to blame the country under attack and tell us it's not enough, you're never satisfied with the arms supplies. We defend ourselves against this. We have a position insisting on peace, but how can you achieve peace? You have to take a realistic point of view on this. We are in a reality, we live in a reality.
Ja, wenn in einem so großen Land wie Russland.
And if you have tyranny in such a large country like Russia, and if the attack on Ukraine reminds us so strongly of the times of fascism, and not by coincidence, then you have to have a clear anti-fascist position. And Germany has a historical responsibility.
Sie sehen Deutschland auch in einer
And you see Germany in a historical responsibility. Yes, I thought a lot of this historical responsibility. I thought of Tarantino's movie Inglourious Bastards, which wrote this history, knew this resilience, this resistance, this hatred against Nazis that was lacking at a time when they were to conquered. Then I thought of today's Germany. It is the time to now improve the mistakes committed in the past. I think it's important to have this discourse, but when we see history repeating itself in such a perverse fashion, then Germany, from my point of view, has to assume a fully new position and play a fully new role, to assume the role of the country that liberates or lends assistance to liberate, to assume the role of ally. And I think this is something that can tie us and bind us together in a new way, Ukraine and Germany. So that was the past, but I think it's even more important to build a shared and common future. And
we
have a new relationship now. Based on our dramatic past, many Ukrainian men and women have been received by Germany, and we see these new ties and these common bonds. We're not yet aware of these new bonds, but we need to have a very clear vision for the future and unfortunately fight for this common future. But there is no choice. Thank you. Mrs. Pradicek, this brings us to you. You are one of the many Ukrainian men and women who have found refuge in Germany. Since March of last year, you live in Freiberg, not Freiburg, first in a refugee home, but now in an apartment. How quickly did you receive help? How did you experience it? What was your experience from your time? First of all, I'd like to express gratitude and thank Germany and everyone involved for their support. Those who for their support to those who are here and who have stayed in Ukraine. Everything went very quickly. Refugee housing, temporary housing, then now permanent apartment. No comments on that. I'm very grateful. I could not have envisaged that people who lead a totally different life and who do not quite exactly understand what's happening. Yes, they can support and they can tell you everything will turn out well and calm you down, although they don't fully understand your situation. I'm very grateful to Germany and everyone involved.
Ukrainisch, Russisch, Polnisch, Englisch und auch Deutsch, ich weiß.
You speak Ukrainian, Polish, Russian, and German. We spoke German. How important was it for you that you're going to be able to work immediately?
Ich habe gerade die vielen Sprachen.
I just mentioned the many languages you speak, Ukrainian, Russian, Polish, English, and German. And I mentioned that you were able to work quickly. You are a teacher and you registered with the education ministry. How important was it to be able to work quickly? It was extraordinarily important. It was important to get my mind off of things. 2 months have passed since the beginning of the war. I continuously was online reading the news. I was in touch with friends and family, and I thought, when I'm here, I need to do something useful, and school children could be something useful. So you're teaching 23 Ukrainian children. How easy or difficult is it for these people, for these children to learn? Where are they with their minds, their feelings? Their thoughts, of course, are at home in Ukraine. Indeed, but the situation has improved. The first months were very hard and difficult. The children talked about politics all the time. They talked about political topics, and during recess they replayed negotiations between Putin and Zelensky and talked about why this happened. The situation was very tense in the first few months, and then they adapted to their lives in Germany. The situation has become much better. Many have started learning German. They speak German. They talk to their German-speaking friends at school. And it helps their integration. They assimilate into their lives in Germany. The situation has improved, but they talk about Ukraine all the time. So how do the negotiations between Putin and Zelensky end? When they are performed by the students? Well, with Ukraine's victory, with our victory, of course. Mr. Horn, you said the willingness to help was big. I think the citizens gathered 2 million euros in donations. And is it right that you doubled the donations? Yes, there's a lot of engagement, integration of refugees. From the very beginning, we tried to order and organize what our friends in Ukraine needed. I received 2 million from our capital in Stuttgart, 2 million euro, and we have received 22 million for emergency generators for the new hospitals, but also the people and the citizens of Freiburg. They donated a lot of money. We have never been managed to garner more support than now, but we, as City Council, we said we're going to double the amount of money donated by private citizens to the tune of 1 million. At the beginning, we ordered electricity generator that cost 50 to 100,000 euros, but now we just ordered generators that cost 540,000 generators. To simply, you don't go to home improvement stores to buy these generators, but these are being produced. But also the state of Baden-Württemberg lent a lot of medical support. The orders for drugs, medical supplies, for respirators, anything that had to be ordered was managed and handled by the university hospitals. We had many video conferences dealing with this. We experienced a great amount of solidarity. I am grateful to Freiburg and the region, but this is just an example for many other cities in Germany and communities in Germany. But we must be careful. We should not get used to this war. We see first signs that people get used to this war, and then people compare. Why am I here and not attending a summit dedicated to the earthquake in Turkey? We need to be clear, and we need to preserve this solidarity among the people. And how do you do that? How does Freiburg do that? During the school holidays, we hosted students from Lviv, and we hosted them for 3 weeks, and we integrated them in sports associations. We have new partnerships between elementary schools, a lot of cultural twinning programs, sports, and there is so much direct contact. That's the advantage of these town twinning partnerships. The direct contacts, this is what it's all about. Of course, we need political leaders acting directly. We need governments that lend support. We need governments providing financial means, but the people-to-people contact, the direct contact between the people. This is what this building of bridges is all about. And you see this also when it comes to the integration of refugees in our community, not just for refugees from Ukraine, but of course also. I'm too fast. Mr. Flassberg, reconstruction is on the table, but when looking at the destruction that is just growing on a daily basis, when do we start and how do we start? What's your plan? At present, we can't talk about a systematic reconstruction. How could we do this? What we do now is repair work, and we stand together. Repair work on the technical level. Energy grids are being destroyed. In the past months, Russia attacked infrastructure in Ukraine, and it is about to restore it as quickly as possible. And we help small and medium-sized companies which were destroyed, to repair them quickly so people can have their livelihoods back, that companies can produce, that the country is up and running, and does not experience, well, normalcy, but can provide for itself, if you will. And beyond that, we need reconstruction, and we need to be very prudent, we need to be precise, we need to plan. It is quite demanding indeed. We must not allow accidental developments. We need to plan starting now. We need to coordinate efforts in Germany. All the ministers that are here coordinate themselves, and we do this within the framework of the G7. We have the G7 platform. We coordinate ourselves to move ahead efficiently so that after a phase of governmental intervention, we have the funds and the capital, private capital necessary. You mention billions of euros are mentioned, and the states cannot provide it on their own. We also need societies to chip in. It is important to talk about reconstruction and a plan for reconstruction. And I had a very deeply emotional session. UN institutions, together with the Lord Mayor of Kharkiv, the Norman Foster Foundation, participates with its know-how and capabilities. And then the mayor of Kharkiv said, I am firmly convinced that our city will become a more sustainable, a better city than before the war. And I believe this is what gives us the strength and to have this cohesion in society, especially when destruction is raging and war is going on. You talked about billions, hundreds of billions of euro. Do you have, could you give us any numbers? I'm a bad economist, but all numbers out there don't have a serious foundation. We just know that there will be a tremendous amount of money needed, but the latest assessments and estimates that we have based on World Bank data, about 700 or 800 billion date back to last year, but this is before the massive destruction of infrastructure started. I think we need to negotiate efficiently and prudently and look at the situation now. In conclusion, I'd like to have a round with all of you. I'd like to ask you to look ahead into the future. I'd like to, although it is difficult, I'd like to hear about your hopes, your expectations. I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Skibitsky. General, what do you wish and hope? What are your wishes and hopes for your country, and what do you expect from your partners? Let's begin with our partners. Today, We have detailed plans and support. We coordinate them on a monthly basis. When talk about military support, there's the Ramstein platform, which lists and clearly states our priorities as far as weapons and training and equipment is concerned. I see this format with a lot of optimism.
Це потужна коаліція, яка працює у
And in April, we will see whether the hopes were justified. 50 countries cooperate within this platform. As far as our country is concerned,
коли була перша Українська Народна Республіка, і, на жаль, тоді
we gained the first historical experience 100 years ago when we saw the first Ukrainian Republic. Unfortunately, we couldn't retain our statehood because there was a aggression by the Bolsheviks. 100 years later, we see history repeating itself. What do we want? We want to be a free people that is looking into a bright future, that is able to speak its language, live in freedom, that our children, our grandchildren are able to live in a normal, civilized country.
нашої перемоги.
We've had European values much earlier than in Moscovia, and our goal is victory. After these terrible times of war, we will have to rebuild our country, and the German people have experience with the reconstruction of their country, with reunification, with the development, the reflourishing of their country. We have experience, we have strength, we see examples, and the bright future of the European Union and community is also a future and a hope that we have. I would like to pass on this last point to you. Ukraine as part of EU, is that a firm idea, not just a hope? How do you see that?
Well, Freiburg has borders with Switzerland, France, and Germany, of course, is very closely linked to the experience people have had in Ukraine. Well, this is the process we have agreed upon. What is the time frame? What do you think? I cannot tell you. It very much depends on the fact that we must not forget this country once this war is over. This will be a long task. It will be a technical task, an economic task. It will be a task requiring empathy, that we will continue to care for this country. And not everyone like Chaka can see this with a sense of humor. It will require a lot of psychological work, social work. Much will depend on this country retaining the will to move in a democratic future, and that will are factors that will define the future. Of course, the situation in Ukraine is that it is a very resilient people, but it's also a people that is suffering. Do you think that people talk about trauma, about the burden, about what is your feeling? Well, people talk about it, and there is a tremendous effort made by psychologists who work permanently with people affected, and this is a huge task ahead, of course. This is part of reconstruction also, I believe. Moral reconstruction, the reconstruction of the soul, yes. And we need to bear this in mind, but also come to this point of reconstruction at some point in time. Right now, we are in the wake of this process. We see something at the horizon, but we are still in the war, and that requires a lot of force that we reach this point where we will reconstruct. What gives you hope? You personally, what gives you hope?
Was macht mir
Well, what gives me hope? Ukrainians, the solidarity that's shown, the German determination and the long stamina we've seen. I am sure that at some point in time we will meet. I think very soon Germany will be as fast as Ukrainians are today and have to be today. And I'm certain about this. This gives me hope. And our president gives me, of course, a lot of hope. His words, you have to be ready to win the war. And this is what we all wish for, this readiness and willingness to win as soon as possible and end this war that way. Thank you. Ms. Pradichuk. When you look to the future, do you see yourself in Ukraine? Do you see yourself in Germany? Are you starting to think about this or not? Or both countries, maybe?
Я не заперечую.
Possibly.
Наразі я будую своє життя тут, але моє серце в Україні.
I am building my life right here, but my heart is home in Ukraine, and this hasn't changed. You cannot simply change this. I came back from Ukraine 2 days ago. I was home, and this feeling that you cannot feel anywhere else is there. There are, of course, here are good people, and they're really nice, but home is home. Ms. Polishchuk, you said you will go back in a few days. What gives you hope when you think about your country and the future?
Знаєте, якщо вже говорити, що мене
When we
обнадіює,
talk about what gives me hope,
по-моєму, я була чи в полоні, чи в Маріуполі, я цю фразу почула вже по
I think
поверненню.
I was still in captivity, or maybe in Mariupol. Our president said there can be very dark times ahead for us. It can be loud, it can be difficult, but it won't be terrible for us anymore. We won't feel ashamed. We are on our own ground. We will not shy away. We defend our country, and we will not give an inch of territory away. And this whole support from all over the world for Ukraine is so important.
Може оцінювати, що той, хто нападає, правий. Той, хто прийшов в чужий дім, вбив.
And even a very primitive person can know who is the victim here and who is guilty. And how could you say somebody is right who is attacking another country, killing people, raping people, murdering people? The idea gives me hope, and I see all the support. Our whole country knows what I wish for, and that is that what we wish one another for holidays and birthdays. And it's one simple thing. And this is also my wish for you. Patience, power, understanding, and that after victory we can meet again as soon as possible at this place, as this society, and sing happy Ukrainian songs about Ukrainian victory. And I promise you I will sing in German then. I would like to thank you, and we will shortly hear you sing a song for us, and after that the Ukrainian ambassador will give a brief speech. But Mr. Horn, there is a diplomatic incident. You have prepared something for the federal president. I hope this is not a diplomatic incident, but I have a very small present with me that our Ukrainian partner city asks me to hand over, and I received this from the Lord Mayor of Lviv at the New Year's reception in Freiburg. It's part of a Russian missile that was intercepted, and by the Ukrainian air defense, it was painted by Ukrainian children.
ein Stück Metall, aber
It's a piece of metal, but it is a very strong message. It was a missile intercepted by Ukrainian air defense, and this is supposed to be a sign and symbol of hope. Sometimes we forget the huge scope of gratitude in Ukraine for the tremendous support they have received. And these were words I heard in Ukraine and also in Freiburg from Ukrainians. And I will travel back to Ukraine in April when we will open a new center for help, and the president will receive this as a token of gratitude from Ukraine. Many thanks and best greetings from Ukraine, Mr. President. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for your remarks. We will hear you sing, and then the ambassador will speak to us. So we will clear the stage now. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Я хочу подякувати ще раз за цю можливість.
Let me thank you once more for the opportunity to be here today, for being able to stand here. This is thanks to your support.
Там в Маріуполі психологічно, що ми вже
So many times we have met with psychological death in Mariupol, and we thought we had given the last sacrifice and fulfilled our last duty, that is to keep up the Russians as long as possible, to save as many lives as possible, to win as much time as possible for Ukraine to prevail. Thanks to the support and the help of the civilized, wise people across the globe, we have prevailed. And I think a person who has met death and suffering can really... It is hard to express this gratitude as a person who has experienced all this, but I would like to sing a song about this fight, which is so difficult for us. We are paying a terrible price. So many victims. The dead are not just numbers. These are mothers of something, sons of somebody, mothers of somebody, sons of somebody. Everyone has someone who could have become president, could have become a pilot. Somebody else might have wanted to learn another language. My people usually don't cry. My comrades usually don't cry. It is not common to cry for the fighters who took up arms, who defended their people and their country. We sing. Instead, we sing, and this song is supposed to sound like the tears of a mother mourning her son, a woman who is just pushing through, taking up arms. And this song is a song we sing at burials for our soldiers. May it rest in your memory forever.
Плине
тисині. Мамко ж моя, не лай мені, мамко ж моя, не лай мені. Ой, залаєш ми в злу годину, залаєш ми в злу годину. Сам не знаю, де погину, сам не знаю, де погину. Гей, погину я в чужім краю, погину я в чужім краю. Хто ж ми буде брати яму? Хто ж ми буде брати яму? Гей, виберуть ми чужі люди, виберуть ми чужі люди. Ці не жаль ти, мамко, буде, ці не жаль ти, мамко, буде. Ой, як би ж мені, синку, не жаль, як би ж мені, синку, не жаль. Ти ж на моїм серцю лежав, ти ж на моїм серцю лежав. Гей, плине кача по тисині, плине кача по тисині. Я вам дякую за цю щирість. Я вам дякую за те, що українська мова може лунати зараз тут. І я впевнена, що українська мова,
making the Ukrainian language resound here. And I'm sure that the Ukrainian language, the Ukrainian song about victory, will resound everywhere. Also in the currently occupied areas, I would like to invite all of you. My mother makes wonderful dishes, a sort of dumplings, and I will cook you borscht. I told the Russians I was not able to cook borscht, but I lied to them. And I would like to invite you all to come visit our strong, free, independent country, and I'm so proud to be saying this today. Thank you very much.
Sehr geehrter Herr Bundespräsident, sehr geehrter Herr Bundeskanzler,
Chancellor, members of the federal government, members of parliament, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, on this day 1 year ago, I could not fathom and envisage to attend such a such an event. Back then, Ukraine's survival was at stake. Today, it's about
schrie die Ukraine Hilfe. Heute
feeling overwhelmed. Back then, Ukraine cried for help. Today, Germany is having a moment of silence in commemory of Ukraine. We appreciate this solidarity and support. Thanks to this support, Ukraine prevailed, and thanks to this support, Ukraine will win. We, Ukraine and Germany, have become much closer throughout the course of this year. We learn to understand each other better, to listen to each other, to being listened to. We learn to speak to each other based on mutual trust, as family members speak to each other. This change of perception is part of this watershed moment, this epochal shift. The you hosting more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees played the major role in this. Of course, there's room for improvement in this understanding, and I'm deeply convinced that such an understanding is actually evolving through knowledge, through research, through learning Ukrainian language as a foreign language in schools, for instance. There is a nice German term for this process, an enlargement to the east in terms of consciousness and awareness. This also holds true for European integration of Ukraine, EU and NATO membership of Ukraine. A question that was an if question that turned into a question as far as when and how quickly this will be happening. And last but not least, also thanks to Germany's position. Germany lends support when where it's most urgently needed at the front lines when it comes to protecting our civilians, our civilian infrastructure, and also when it comes to support for urgently needed reconstruction. Germany turned into the largest European supporter, militarily speaking, but also financially speaking. German weapons save lives. German weapons save Ukraine. Ukraine shares and, most importantly, defends European values, values that all German democratic parliamentary groups represent. Ukraine is not a point of dispute, but it is a point of defending democratic values. And I'd like to thank members of Parliament. I'm grateful that we share peaceful visions, a vision for peace with the German government. We must not see dictated peace. We need a just and lasting peace. It's not about borders or regions, territories. It is about people. Today we're fighting for Ukraine's freedom. First and foremost, for the liberation of our people. We all know about the atrocities that are happening under Russian occupation. Torture, kidnapping, murdering. We cannot, unfortunately, fathom the extent of Russian crimes of war. Ladies and gentlemen, peace does not just fall out of the sky. Typically in Ukraine, we see Russian missiles falling from the sky. A just and lasting peace has to be fought for. This is why we stand together in order to achieve this. Our boys and girls on the Ukrainian front lines stand for this, a front line that divides Europe from barbarism. Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to many Ukrainians here today, and I am proud that I am able to represent this country, these people, as an ambassador to Germany. President, you said today that you can rely on Germany. We feel this, and to have such an ally is the best thing we could have, I could have as ambassador, and my fellow compatriots could have here. I thank you, and I thank you, Mr. Chancellor, for assuming such a clear position and saying it clearly that Germany will support Ukraine as long as it takes and as long as it's necessary. We are standing at the front lines. We hold up this defense together, and together we will win. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the official part of this event. We are going to continue discussions in the adjacent rooms. The Ukrainian embassy and we together wanted to give you a glimpse on this anniversary from the various perspectives. And of course, this has to include a mourning and suffering, but also a glimpse on the situation that reflects our admiration for the courageous fight of Ukraine for your freedom. And Mrs. Maischberger, you said it at the end, it is a glimpse beyond this day, after the end of the war. I hope that we succeeded in giving you the various perspectives on this. If we succeeded, I'd like to thank you also for your help in preparing. I'd like to thank Mrs. Maischberger for a wonderful panel, and thank you for participating. Thanks to the participants from Ukraine and Germany. I thank you for this debate, this discussion we had for more than an hour, and we both express gratitude and thank you for taking the time for your interest in this event today. I think it was a dignified a ceremony looking back on 365 days of war and of suffering.